I heard her voice through the basement door before I even put my key in the lock. Muffled, hoarse, calling my name. I'd been gone for 8 days, sitting beside my father's hospital bed 3 states away, watching him recover from emergency surgery. I was exhausted, still wearing the same jacket I'd left in. My phone nearly dead. The house was dark. It was just past 10 at night. My son's car wasn't in the driveway. I dropped my bag and moved toward the sound. The basement door was closed, and there was a padlock on it. A new padlock, brass and heavy, the kind you'd use on a storage shed. I didn't own a padlock. I didn't lock the basement. "Diane," I called. Her voice cracked. "Michael. Oh God, Michael, please." My hands were shaking as I looked for something to break it. I found a crowbar in the garage, jammed it into the hasp, and wrenched it free. The screws splintered out of the doorframe. I yanked the door open and ran down the stairs. She was sitting on the concrete floor near the water heater, wrapped in a blanket, her face streaked with tears. There was a jug of water beside her, some granola bars, a bucket in the corner. The air smelled stale sour. "Deanne, what happened? Who did this?" She looked up at me, and I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. The kind I'd never seen in 26 years of marriage. "It was Ethan," she whispered. "Our son. He locked me down here." I didn't believe her at first. I couldn't. Ethan was 23, still living at home while he finished his graduate degree, quiet and dependable. He'd been the one I'd called before I left for the hospital, the one I'd trusted to check on Diane while I was gone. "That doesn't make sense," I said. "Why would he?" "I don't know." Her voice broke. "He came home the night after you left. He said we needed to talk. He said I'd done something, but he wouldn't tell me what. Then he grabbed my arm and pushed me down here. He's been keeping me here ever since." I helped her upstairs. She could barely walk. Her legs were stiff, her hands cold. I got her water, made her sit, called 911. The dispatcher asked if she needed medical attention. Diane shook her head, but I said yes anyway. They sent an ambulance. While we waited, I tried calling Ethan. No answer. I sent a text. Nothing. The paramedics arrived and checked her over. Dehydration, mild shock, some bruising on her wrist. They wanted to take her to the hospital. She refused. She just wanted to rest, she said. She wanted to be home. After they left, I asked her again. "What did he say?" "What did you do?" "I don't know, Michael. I swear I don't know." I wanted to believe her. She was my wife. We'd built a life together, raised a son, survived job losses in tight years, and all the small wars of a long marriage. But there was something in her voice. Something that didn't sit right. I didn't sleep that night. I kept checking my phone, waiting for Ethan to call or text. Nothing. At dawn, I drove to his girlfriend's apartment across town. She answered the door in a bathrobe, confused. "He's not here," she said. "I haven't seen him in a week." "He didn't tell you he was leaving." She shook her head. "He's been weird lately. Distant. I thought maybe he was stressed about school." I asked if he'd said anything about me or Diane. She hesitated. "He asked me a strange question a few weeks ago," she said slowly. "He asked if I thought people could hide who they really were for years, like pretend to be someone they weren't." I didn't know what he meant. I thanked her and left. When I got home, Diane was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with coffee. She looked fragile in the morning light, older than I remembered. "I want to call the police," I said. "No." Her answer was immediate, firm. "Diane, he locked you in a basement for a week. Has our son? That doesn't mean. Please." She reached across the table and took my hand. "Let's just talk to him first. Figure out what's going on. If we call the police, his life is over. You know that." I did know that. A charge like that, false imprisonment, assault, it would destroy him. And part of me still couldn't reconcile the son I knew with what Diane was describing. So I agreed. We'd wait. We'd talk to him. But I also started paying attention. That afternoon, while Diane was sleeping, I went through the house. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Evidence, maybe. Some explanation. I found Ethan's laptop in his room, still open. I knew his password. He'd never been secretive about it. I opened his browser history. The searches went back 3 weeks. Legal terms: false identity, marriage fraud, statute of limitations fraud, annulment laws by state. then deeper private investigators, background check services, public records search. My chest tightened. I opened his email. There were dozens of messages to and from a private investigation firm in the city. I clicked on the most recent thread. The investigator had sent a report, a full background check on Diane. Her maiden name, her birthplace, her work history. But there was a second name listed, a legal name she'd used before we met, and a marriage record, from 1996, 2 years before I met her. She'd been married before. I sat back in the chair staring at the screen. She'd told me I was her first, her only. We'd gotten married in 1998, young and broke and certain. She'd said she'd never wanted anyone else. But this document said otherwise. A marriage in Texas, dissolved in 1997. The name on the certificate, Diane Keller, married to a man named Joseph Abrams. I kept reading. The investigator had found more. Court records. A restraining order filed by Joseph Abrams in 1997, claiming Diane had stolen money from a joint account and disappeared. The order had been dropped a year later. But the file was still there. I printed the report. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I called the investigator directly. A man answered, polite and professional. I identified myself as Ethan's father and said I needed to understand what my son had hired him to find. He came to me about a month ago, the investigator said. He said he'd found an old letter in your attic. It was addressed to his mother, but it was from someone named Joseph. It mentioned a wedding, a shared life, things that didn't line up with what he knew about her past. He wanted to know if it was real. And it was. Your wife was married before she met you. Legally, the marriage was annulled, but there's some ambiguity about whether the annulment was finalized before she married you. If it wasn't, there's a potential issue with the validity of your marriage. I felt the floor shift under me. What kind of issue? Bigamy. If the first marriage wasn't properly dissolved, her marriage to you could be considered void. That would affect a lot of things. Property, inheritance, custody if your son had been a minor. It's a complicated situation. Your son seemed very concerned about it. I thanked him and hung up. I went downstairs. Diane was awake, sitting in the living room. She looked up when I walked in. We need to talk, I said. She saw the papers in my hand. Her face went pale. Where did you get those? Ethan hired someone to look into your past. She stood up, shaking her head. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. She was quiet for a long time. Then she sat back down, her hands folded in her lap. I was married before, she said quietly. I didn't tell you because it didn't matter. It was over. He was abusive. I left. I started over. Did you finalize the divorce? She hesitated. I thought I did. I filed the papers. I paid a lawyer, but I left Texas before it was done. I assumed it went through. Did you check? No. So when we got married, I didn't know, she said, her voice rising. I didn't know it wasn't final. I thought it was over. I thought I was free. That's not good enough, Diane. She looked at me, tears starting. I was scared. I was 24 and running from a man who told me he'd kill me if I left. I didn't have time to check paperwork. I just wanted to survive. I wanted to believe her. Part of me did. But I also thought about the restraining order, the stolen money, the investigator's careful, clinical words. I thought about Ethan, who'd found that letter and followed it all the way to the truth. Where is Ethan now? I asked. I don't know. Did you threaten him? What? Nopo. Then why did he lock you in the basement? She didn't answer. I left the room and called Ethan again. This time he picked up. Dead. Where are you? I'm safe. Are you home? Yes. I found your mother. What the hell were you thinking? There was a pause. Did she tell you? Tell me what? About the marriage. About Joseph. About the money. She told me some of it. Did she tell you she's still legally married to him? My stomach dropped. What? The annulment was never finalized. I confirmed it with a lawyer. Her marriage to Joseph Abrams is still active, which means her marriage to you isn't legal. And that means... Ethan, stop. Just come home? No, I can't. Why not? Because I don't trust her. He hung up. I stood there, holding the phone, trying to piece it all together. If what Ethan was saying was true, then Diane and I weren't legally married. That meant she had no claim to our house, our accounts, our assets. Everything we'd built was technically mine alone. But it also meant Ethan had a reason to act. If he believed Diane was lying, if he thought she was using me, using us, he might have locked her away to protect me, or to force her to admit the truth. I didn't know who to believe anymore. I called a lawyer the next morning, a family attorney I'd worked with years ago on estate planning. I explained the situation calmly, clinically. She listened without interrupting. If the prior marriage wasn't dissolved, she said, then your marriage is void. Not invalid, but void from the start. That has significant legal implications. You'd need to determine the status of the first marriage definitively. If it's still active, you and Diane were never married in the eyes of the law. What about our son? He's legally yours regardless. Paternity doesn't depend on marital status. What about the house? Our accounts? If your name is on the deed and the accounts, they're yours. She'd have no automatic claim. But if she can prove she contributed financially or domestically, she could sue for compensation under a palimony or unjust enrichment claim. It's messy. I thanked her and scheduled a consultation. That afternoon, I drove to the county clerk's office. I requested a copy of our marriage certificate and any related documents. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with reading glasses on a chain, pulled up the records. It's here, she said. Issued in 1998. But there's a note in the file. What kind of note? A query from an attorney's office filed 2 weeks ago. Someone was checking the validity of this marriage. Ooh. She checked the request form. An attorney representing Ethan Lawson. My son had already been here. I went home and found Diane in the kitchen. I didn't say anything at first. I just put the papers on the table. Ethan filed a legal inquiry, I said. He's trying to prove our marriage is void. She stared at the papers. Why would he do that? Because if you're not my wife, you have no claim to anything. And if he's worried you're going to take what's mine, or his inheritance, he'd want to stop you. I would never. Wouldn't you? She looked up at me, and for the first time I saw something other than fear. I saw calculation. You think I'm lying? She said softly. I think you didn't tell me the truth. I was protecting myself. From what? She didn't answer. I spent the next 2 weeks quietly gathering information. I contacted Joseph Abrams through social media. He responded cautiously. We spoke on the phone. I haven't thought about Diane in years, he said. We were married for 8 months. She left in the middle of the night, took $12,000 from our joint account, and disappeared. I filed for an annulment, but I never heard back from her or her lawyer. I assumed it went through. It didn't. There was a long silence. So we're still married. Technically, yes. Jesus. He agreed to sign an affidavit confirming the facts. I forwarded it to my attorney. Ethan finally came home 3 weeks after I'd found Diane. He walked in quietly, set his bag down, and looked at me. Is she here? He asked. She's upstairs. I need to talk to you. Alone. We sat in the living room. He looked tired, older. I didn't want to hurt her, he said. I just needed time. Time to prove what I found. I knew if I confronted her, she'd deny it. Or leave. Or convince you I was crazy. You locked her in a basement. I know. I'm not proud of it. But Dad, she's been lying to you for 26 years. She was never your wife. And I think she knew. Why do you think that? He pulled out a folder. Inside were copies of emails, printed from an old account Diane had kept. Messages to a friend sent years ago joking about the legal gray area of her marriage, laughing about how I'd never check. I read them twice. My hands were shaking. I'm sorry, Ethan said. I didn't say anything. I just sat there, staring at the proof of a lie I'd lived inside for half my life. The lawyer filed a petition for annulment of my marriage to Diane on the grounds that her prior marriage was still legally valid. Diane didn't contest it. She moved out 2 weeks later quietly without drama. She took what was hers, clothes, personal items, and left everything else. Ethan stayed. We didn't talk about what he'd done. Not directly. But I understood it now. He'd been protecting me the only way he knew how. And maybe it was wrong. Maybe it was extreme, but it came from a place I recognized. a need to stop someone from taking what wasn't theirs. I sold the house 6 months later. Started fresh in a smaller place across town. Ethan moved into his own apartment, started a job, began rebuilding his life. We see each other once a week. We don't talk about Diane. We talk about work, about the future, about small, normal things. And slowly, I'm learning to trust again. Not blindly, not without questions, but enough to move forward. If you've ever had to choose between loyalty and truth, you're not alone.